And Sue's doing storytelling and bringing history to life. Her time is 7 to 9 minutes. Her speech title is Thomas Jefferson. And Sue is presenting the final chapter from Storytelling from the Advanced Communication Series, project number 5, Bringing History to Life. Again, time 7 to 10 minutes. Thomas Jefferson, author of the Declaration of Independence, of the Statute of Virginia for Religious Freedom, and the father of the University of Virginia. These words are cherished into Thomas Jefferson's tombstone. We all learned about the forefathers of the United States of America, and Thomas Jefferson stands out as a brilliant, extraordinary collection of talent and of human knowledge that has ever been gathered together in the White House. Welcome, Sue Lala.
Good morning. Thomas Jefferson, amazing guy. We wouldn't be the country we are without his extraordinary talent. While I adjust my glasses. Thomas Jefferson, author of the United States Constitution, also the Statute of Virginia for Religious Freedom, and the father of the University of Virginia. These words are chiseled into his tombstone. But in truth, we could have added scientist, lawyer, farmer, architect, diplomat, inventor, musician, philosopher, and third president of the United States of America. He was an extraordinary man living in a remarkable time. We all learned about the forefathers of the United States, and Thomas Jefferson stands out as a brilliant, extraordinary collection of talent and human knowledge. But he was a contradiction, and that contradiction is the subject of slavery. On the one hand, Jefferson wrote all men are created equal. On the other hand, he wrote that black people are inferior. He also wrote women were inferior too. So join me as I look over the shoulder of Thomas Jefferson as he writes the Constitution of America, Declaration of Independence, represents our new nation in Paris, serves as the first Secretary of State to the first president, George Washington. And this president, our third president, his term was the first decade of the 19th century. As the president, he stood up to pirates. He got the best from France. He acquired the 17th state, which is Missouri. And that Louisiana Purchase with Missouri, it was more than half the size of this country he added. His vice president took part in a murderous duel, then a mysterious plot. I think we in New York City have a fantastic play about what's going on in Hamilton. So Thomas Jefferson was born in Virginia in 1743. When Jefferson was about 9 years old, he went away to school. It was only 50 miles away, but 9-year-old boys can't trot home every day. So he only came home for holidays and summer. And by the time he went to school, he was already proficient with a violin, surveying, and farming, 9 years old. At school, he studied science, math, Latin, Greek, French, and during those summers at home, he became great friends with Patrick Henry. When Jefferson was 16 years old, he went away to college, all the way to Williamsburg to College of William and Mary. During this time at college is when Jefferson fine-tuned his bold pursuit of knowledge, his passion in learning about mathematics, law, geography, music, science, art, history, philosophy, which included politics about the colonies and across the sea, in the Parliament and the court of King George III. In 1762, that's when Jefferson began to study law. It was during this time that 1765, the lawmakers of the British Parliament decided we, the American citizens of Great Britain, had no say. These American citizens had to provide lodging for British soldiers, and we also had to buy royal tax stamps. In Williamsburg, Jefferson listened to his friend Patrick Henry. He was newly elected to the House. He made a fiery speech about this tax stamp. What about their sole right and power as Englishmen to tax themselves? The question was a lightning bolt in a darkening sky. The grumbling was heard all the way to London. The tax stamp was undone except the tax stamp on tea. That was trouble, because King George, he could muck up the Boston Harbor, and then all 13 colonies would be in trouble. So Jefferson wrote a summary view of the rights of British America. We were British America. The legislature and one part of the empire had no business trampling on the God-given rights of another. We call this taxation without representation. Between 1773 and 1776, a busy time for the colonists, they chose delegates to meet in the Continental Congress. The point of no return kind of trouble broke out between British soldiers and Massachusetts, and this skirmish brought about the Second Continental Congress. After a year of debate and turmoil, the time had come for Americans to demand, as Patrick Henry once said, liberty or death. So, John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, they knew Thomas Jefferson to be a fine writer and a scholar. They asked him to tell the world what many colonists believed and why they committed revolution. It took Thomas Jefferson two hot weeks to compose America's shocking manifesto. Most people believed it was God's right who put those monarchs in the powerful thrones. Americans were doing something entirely new and possibly sinful, quitting the British Empire without the king's permission. They meant to make a nation based on the ideas that all men are born free, created equal, with leaders whose power came from the consent of the governed. On July 2nd, 1776, they agreed to break away from Britain. 2 days later, on July 4th, 1776, they pledged to each other our lives, our fortune, and our sacred honor. They knew they'd be traitors to the king, and they faced the wrath of the most powerful empire on earth. There might be signing of death warrants the minute they signed the Declaration of Independence. This new America, based on the consent of the governed, was in a hopeless battle with an inexperienced Continental Army against the King's Redcoats. Back in Virginia, Jefferson was working on state laws that would shape the nation to be, especially that of the separation of government from free practice of one's religion. His writings included the country's addiction to the abominable crime of slavery. The U.S. Constitution went into effect in 1789. George Washington was our first president. Our first Secretary of State, Thomas Jefferson. He became our third president, 2 terms from 1801 to 1809. Some of the highlights of this amazing statesman as President of the United States follows. June 1801, Barbary Coast over in Tripoli, way over yonder. They said that we owed them money. They demanded fortunes and tribute, and 4 years later, that tiny U.S. Navy sailed into action and earned a peace treaty in 1805. July 4th, 1802, the U.S. Military Academy, West Point, New York, opened its doors. September 1802, just a few months later, a Federalist newspaper said Jefferson fathered children by his slave, Sally Hemings. Jefferson refused to comment on what he called federal slander. January 1803, Thomas asked Congress for $2,500 to pay for a voyage of discovery all the way to the Pacific Ocean. 5 months later, documents were signed to purchase from France at only a measly $15 million the Louisiana Purchase. Napoleon needed his money for the war that he had with England, and Jefferson felt the new United States of America needed this land to hold off any other country coming from the West or down from Canada. It just so happened that the secretary to Thomas Jefferson was an explorer. His name was Meriwether Lewis and Clark. It took them 3 years. Came back, laid it out, said, look, this is what you bought. July 1804, Jefferson's Vice President Aaron Burr challenged, shot, killed former Secretary of Treasury Alexander Hamilton in a duel. Later, Burr was charged with trying to win his own empire in the West. March, 3 years later, Congress passed a law. This is March 1807, that it would be against the law to import slaves from Africa. 1808, the Osage Indians signed over their lands, most of what present-day Missouri and northern Arkansas, and moved to what we know as Oklahoma. The year 1809, Abraham Lincoln, Charles Darwin were born. During the War of 12, Jefferson heard that British troops had torched the White House and the government's library. Jefferson, who believed that only educated people could fully take part in a democracy, offered his beloved personal library to the nation for the people. He got $25,000, and the people got the beginning of the Library of Congress. Thomas Jefferson, our third president.